the galaxy. To your eyes, 100 billion points of light. But where you see light, I see worlds, and the countless stories that fill them. What you call destiny is just an equation, the product of variables, right place, right time, or in some instances, the wrong place at the wrong time. What if one choice changed everything? What if every reality came down to one single moment? Join me, explore the multiverse, and ask the question, what if?
Perfect, thank you.
We were looking at how to grow, how to expand, how to evolve post-Endgame and into Phase 4. And we had tons of ideas for features and for follow-ups to existing characters and introducing new characters. But it was Disney Plus and the idea of Disney Plus that really allowed us to roll up our sleeves and do things we hadn't done before. We had to think, what ideas are worth doing in animation that we couldn't do anywhere else? And it was Brad Winterbaum who came into my office and said, what about doing a what if? We have so many fans now. We have so many people that have watched our movies multiple times. Everybody knows how things happened, how Iron Man became Iron Man, how Cap became Cap, that the What If series from comics was always such a great way of putting a spin on it.
What if as a concept and as a comic book is something that would always come up in conversation. I can think back to the earliest retreats. We would think about what if, just in terms of not necessarily adapting it, but how many great stories came out of the What If comic book, and how so many of those stories actually became canon within the main continuity of the Marvel Comics universe. Speaking from my own personal experience, and this is something that other people have said as well, What If was a bit of a gateway to different comics you wouldn't normally pick up. You know, I loved Ghost Rider growing up, and I think the first Ghost Rider I picked up was the What If Danny Ketch's sister became Ghost Rider instead of him. And then I was like, this is awesome. And then I read all that Danny Ketch Ghost Rider run. You know, and I think a lot of people had a similar experience with What If. It introduced you to characters you wouldn't normally read. In kind of abstracting them, it made them new. So there was a lower barrier of entry. You didn't feel like you needed to read the 60 comics leading up to that one storyline. It was its own unique thing that you could experience as a newcomer.
I remember when I was a kid getting some of the comics, and whether it's like, you know, Conan in New York with Howard the Duck, or, you know, crazy stuff. It was almost like it was Marvel's Twilight Zone at the time. And I think its heyday was really in the 70s, a little bit in the 80s. It still's gone on, but those were the ones to really remember. I think it was a testing ground for certain stories, certain possible ways they can possibly go with various characters, you know, trying it out, you know, safely in this little one-off comic. And then if it struck a chord, they can run with it. So for example, like, what if the Hulk was smart, kind of a thing, and that eventually became a whole storyline of its own with like Smart Hulk and all this business. And that's happened with actually quite a few of the What If titles. So there is a lineage there, but for our show, we're not borrowing anything that was pre-done in the comic. We just came up with just new stuff, since it's born directly out of the MCU specifically. So we're not just riffing on, you know, the comic characters per se. We're riffing on the Marvel movie cinematic version of those characters.
Whoa, I got visual on the intruder. He's a Caucasian male, mid-20s, with really great hair.
Excuse me?
We had been working with Brian Andrews for many years at Marvel Studios. He had boarded some of our most iconic action sequences. I had worked with him on Ant-Man 1 when he designed Scott Lang's first descent into the quantum realm at the end of that movie. And He had taken a big hand most recently as part of the story room that cracked the finale of Endgame, which was a combination of storyboard artists and Chris and Steve, the writers. And frankly, when I pitched What If to Kevin and things were happening so fast, I just called Brian, who I knew, and said, hey dude, do you wanna work on this together? And his response was, well, yeah, man, of course.
You know, my brothers and I grew up loving all kinds of animation, but we also grew up loving Marvel. I mean, we had How to Draw the Marvel Way, you know. We were huge fans of like the paintings of Frank Frazetta and the rest of it. But it's all in that same kind of like action-y adventure, you know, bigger than life mythos stuff. And the Marvel comics were definitely an inspiration. You know, certain artists would rise above others in our minds, whether it's like, you know, Kirby or whoever else. It's like there's certain artists that just captured your imagination in those drawings, in those panels. And to think that so many years later, working in the live action stuff, it's like, oh, I used to draw all those characters when I was a kid, but here I am working on it now for the cinematic universe, which is already kind of like, well, that's an amazing dream. But then now also doing it in an animated show that's revisiting those characters, and it's like, wait, what? It's pretty amazing.
One of the interesting things that happened in the development process of What If is how many ideas just come up, and we're still coming up with them. You almost can't stop thinking about it.
What are you doing? Tinkering with time can weaken the very fabric of the universe.
The key to the stories that were ultimately chosen is that they were all character-based stories, and they all drove at the human heart, which is why we hired Ashley Bradley as our EP and head writer of the show. If you look at her work on Troll Hunters and Three Below, you see a writer who, no matter what the big crazy sci-fi circumstance is always trying to find the core of the character and creates conflicts that really challenge who those characters are. And that's something we always try to do in the movies, and that's something that each episode of What If is going to try to do.
For a minute, I really thought it was you and me against the world.
We're not fighting the same battles, Tony.
The first few weeks, it was basically me and the other executive producers, which is Brad Winderbaum and Brian Andrews, and it was camp. It was 2 weeks of what stories do we want to tell? There's obvious ones. What if Thor was never banished? What if Ultron won?
I'm going to bring about peace in our time.
And once we got those out of our system, we started then playing more with, what if Yondu kidnapped the wrong kid instead of Peter Quill? What happens next?
What you doing out there all by yourself anyway?
Exploring the world.
Sounds fun, but why stop at one world, huh? When we can show you all of them.
Once you realize what the show can be, it's almost impossible not to ideate. Your brain just starts to explore every corner of the universe. That's something that made the whole development process of this series so euphoric, was that you get in a room with people and it was just idea, because almost every event could be reconceived and remixed into its own what if story. And we realized very quickly that you could come up with a cool idea like, oh, what if Peggy Carter got into the Project Rebirth chamber and became a super soldier instead of Steve Rogers? But that was only the beginning. It wasn't just what if, it was also then what. So every pitch that we came up with, every idea that we conceived of had two parts. It had the what if, which was essentially the inciting incident, and it had the then what, which is the actual story.
What in heavens?
And as we developed the stories in the series, the then whats became the real emotional bedrock of the stories we were telling.
You're my hero, Steve. I mean, you're a hero.
You're my hero, too.
The heart of the characters, though, always has to remain the same. If T'Challa is in Wakanda or chilling with the Ravagers in outer space, he is always the once and future king.
Should we be bowing? I feel like we should be bowing. I mean, unless we should be kneeling.
Neither is necessary.
Please.
Doesn't matter where in the world Tony Stark is, Pepper Potts is his North Star.
A lot of people come around looking to get their moment in the sun with Tony Stark, and it's my job to sniff out exactly what it is they want with him.
And what do you smell?
Nothing. And that's the problem.
Steve Rogers, whether he's in his Captain America uniform, whether he's skinny Steve or not, he's the guy that will go to the ends of the earth to do what he believes is right.
Hey, I need a hand! Come on, help me get him out of here! No, you gotta get me in the suit.
That's where we always kind of start with, like, we go in different directions, but we stay true to the characters as much as humanly possible.
I believe that in this universe, as in every other, hope never dies.
One of the things we're exploring in Phase 4, which we've talked about, is the multiverse. And what if, as almost every episode is narrated by the character the Watcher, a very important character in the comics that we've never really seen much of in the MCU. Briefly, we saw some Watchers as a little cameo with Stan Lee in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted.
We know the way it worked in the movies we watched. He's showing us other ways it could have gone.
In a multiverse of infinite possibility, is your destiny determined by your nature or by the nature of your world?
We knew that we were going to do The Watcher. The Watcher is a big part of What If. We needed this guide to help us navigate these vast new realities. And the voice we all heard in our head was Jeffrey Wright from day one.
I am the Watcher. Where humans see chaos, I see the crucible that would transform this collection of individuals into a team of heroes.
The Watcher kind of serves as a Rod Serling to the Twilight Zone, kind of narrating the events, but also a sometimes passive, sometimes not participant.
Oh, you're so close. The answer is right there.
The Watcher is a celestial, extraterrestrial being. I think he was introduced, if I'm not mistaken, in a Fantastic Four comic in 1963, where we discover him on the moon, and he's introduced on the cover as the most dramatic being.
Humanity. So eager, so willing to face the impossible, yet blind to the bigger picture.
The language is very cool, and it kind of, it speaks to a certain tone. He's obviously got to have a kind of strength and a kind of, gravitas and power and all that stuff.
Time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path. It's a prism of endless possibilities.
I like the idea of doing animation, of using the voice really as, from my perspective, as, the whole character. I'd really just pretty much do what I do with any script, though, and anything, is just try to find the music that's on the page and figure out if I can play it,
I am the Watcher. I am your guide through these vast new realities. Follow me and ponder the question, what if?
It was a really organic and kind of, methodical process of talking it through at first and trying to give some ideas about, how I'd like a character like this to sound. I think often when you have a character like this in kind of the history of, shows and movies, we make these certain assumptions about what that character should sound like, Very often it's some, old, when we think of power and wisdom and all of this, we think, we go to the UK for some reason. We think of Brits. It's like, I don't know if the British necessarily have, the monopoly on all those things. So how can we find some other tones and rhythms and things that bring all of that, that power to the character, but are grounded in maybe some different rhythms and some different notes. And that was a fun conversation to have.
A genius battled his demons, both inside and out, while the world met the monster hiding in the man, and a godly prince fell to earth.
He's both the guardian, but also the observer of what happens across the multiverse. There's kind of a running joke in the comic books. He says he'll never interfere. Wait 5 pages, and there he is in the middle of it.
And in the comics, he got downright goofy at times and involved all the time. We're going to acknowledge those things, but slowly over time. Maybe not the goofiness, but we want to play with the conceit that the being is mysterious for the first initial episodes, and we start seeing more and more of him as the episodes play out. So by the end, he's actually full-figured. We really see him. We really know, like, oh, here's this alien being, and he might actually get involved for him, what might be the first time.
You want me to say it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I want to hear you say it.
Okay. I can't believe I'm about to say this. I see now. I need your help.
The visual aesthetic and the storytelling really begin with Brian Andrews. He is designing every frame of the show and working with the story team of talented board artists to create the cinematic flow of this series. And he's working so closely with Ryan Meinerding to figure out what these characters look like.
Ryan Meinerding is amazing. He's been the head of Marvel visual development, I think, since Iron Man. He's brilliant, and we've been so lucky that he's been wanting to like come and play in our sandbox.
I've always been a fan of Jason Leyendecker and Norman Rockwell and a lot of the older American illustrators, and when Brian and Brad pitched the notion of using that as a basis for the style of the show, I mean, that's my bread and butter. I love that stuff. So trying to find a way to create visuals for this project that are going to turn that illustrative style into an animated style using our characters is just, it's been really a lot of fun.
It's a good look on you.
Really? You think I could pull it off?
Maybe I'll grow into it.
I was trained that there's no difference between animation and live action, even though clearly there are things that are different. But at its core, it's just all visual storytelling. It's composition within the picture frame. It's emotion. It's character. And those things exist regardless of whether you're doing a stop motion thing, a 2D animated thing, 3D animated, live action. It doesn't matter. And I've felt personally that animation hasn't quite gone as cinematic here in the States as it could. And Brad was in agreement, and we felt like, okay, well, here's a way that maybe if we play our cards right, if we do what is in our brain, if we can get it out there onto the thing, it's like maybe we can achieve that. Maybe we can like move the bar a little bit, which would be awesome, just for our own personal love of the stuff. And so part of that style we're chasing is something that is, you know, atmospheric and cinematic, and something that borrows from live action photography cinematic sense and really apply it to animation.
Looking for directions, sir? Because you seem to have lost your way.
You would do best to kneel before a god.
We don't really do that here.
The stories that they're doing are so great and so concise that the direction that I'm getting is like sort of like, this is the character, this is the, you know, the costume they would be in, and we want to twist it in this way. So we're able to do some work that hopefully is going to land pretty quickly. It's also not only about character design and sort of a live action sense of like, how is this character different than what we've seen before? But also, since we're trying to develop a new animation style, sort of like, how can we turn these characters into animated characters in a way that still represents the character from the film, but gives them a new life in sort of an animated form.
Steve Rogers sent me. The name's Captain Carter.
Another big decision for the show was that we were going to chase character likeness as opposed to actor likeness. And it's a hard thing to define because the two things are so intrinsically linked, but we wanted to capture the spirit of the character in the same way that the actor would capture the spirit of the character on screen. And knowing that you're never gonna, it's not a photorealistic medium, so the questions became like, well, what is Doctor Strange? What is Tony Stark? Like, how to depict them in terms of their evolution as a character on screen.
I'll say this for the new guy, he certainly makes for good TV, right?
A lot of this stuff is fun because we can actually do pencil sketches and have them be relevant for the project. So starting with Skinny Steve and a version of Captain Carter, you know, just started trying to find things that were interesting about the characters' faces from the live action setting and try to simplify them. You know, going forward from there into finding like a look for a dark Thor.
Oh, do me!
Yes, you do me, and you too. Oh, you guys really get me.
But yeah, this is sort of the starting point, and I haven't sketched all of them on paper, but I've done some of them, and then transitioning into the computer, being able to color and sort of refine them.
Here we go. Here we go.
We definitely wanted to stand out, and there is a variety of animated product being made these days, and a lot of it tends to be CG, and sometimes even, I guess they call it 2.5D or 2D, 3D, where it's like it's 3D, but it's made to look 2D. So you might have your traditional backgrounds painted, and the characters look as if they're cell painted on but they're not. We're exploring a variety of techniques, and whatever is going to help us achieve the look we're going for, we'll use. But we want to kind of hide it a bit and make sure that it doesn't jump out. And in our opinion, it felt like a lot of the things that we were seeing, that stuff just jumps out, you know, and sometimes the 3D maybe isn't working. There's aspects that were pros and cons, so it seemed like the best way to achieve what we wanted to achieve, which is to be buckled down, have some really hard discipline, and just make something rad 2D, so that we would have the artistic freedom to have it look as rich as we wanted.
Packs quite a wallop, does it not?
The earliest conversations I had with Brian Andrews were all about light and quality of light and how the light would kind of blow out in the atmosphere of the show itself. Brian was searching for this cinematic style using bokeh lenses and anamorphic lenses, or emulating them in an animated space, to try to give the world of What If a real cinematic quality that we rarely see in animation.
Play with light and shadow, play with focus, play with the fact that it's like, oh, even though it's animated and we didn't shoot it with an anamorphic lens, maybe we're making it look like we did, because that has a voice and that has a language. We've grown up watching movies shot a certain way, and now it's become second nature. So now when we see things that are speaking that language, without even realizing it, we'll start relating to them. Cinematic storytelling is becoming a thing, where you don't have to just go to a movie to see cinematic storytelling. We're actually seeing it on the streaming screen or the small screen. And there's so many shows out now that are just borrowing the cinematic language and just going there. So they are, even though they're quote unquote episodes of a show, they feel like, in a way, many movies when they do it right.
Wakanda forever!
It's pretty exciting when you see it all come together, and the laying on works and everything layers together well. I mean, this is like a really beautiful kind of like richly cinematic quality to the animation, and there are some wonderful sound effects that are used too at times with the voice, and to see it all come together and this kind of diverse perspectives, diverse range of heroism and villainy. I think it's going to be pretty exciting stuff.
You will listen to me! My mother is coming! And she is not happy!
Right off the bat, there were some ideas that we had that became episodes in the show. Peggy Carter becoming Captain Carter was a very, very early concept. And also, right on the heels of that, in the then what half of the story was, well then what happens to Steve Rogers? He stays skinny, she gets the Tesseract early, Howard Stark's there, maybe he builds an Iron Man suit, what powers it? Maybe the Tesseract. All of a sudden, the Hydra Stomper is born.
Steve!
Hey, Peggy, now you owe me one.
And then we get to tell that story of the tragic love affair, this dance that Peggy Carter and Steve Rogers have through time, where they don't ever get to fulfill their relationship without some event that gets in the way.
You owe me a dance lesson.
Yes! Saturday night!
Oh, it's a great story, because it is exploring the relationship between Steve and Peggy, with this time Peggy being the super soldier. And it's also nice because we get to have a female hero, superhero, and what does that look like in the 1940s? How is she treated? What's the battles that she has to fight that are singular to her, being a woman, that Steve, we never had to deal with.
Where have you been all my life?
The Allies must be desperate.
sending in a fragile Fraulein to fight for them.
Fragile.
Scheiße.
Exactly.
Another idea that was super early on was T'Challa Star-Lord. We knew we wanted to do something with T'Challa because Chadwick was so amazing to work with that it just felt like he would embrace the idea and want to do something fun. At a certain point, we realized he was around the same age as Peter Quill, and that the Ravagers, who were a bunch of buffoons, accidentally gone off course.
Cool.
And what if they kidnapped T'Challa instead?
Ravager!
It quickly became one of our super favorites. Just the idea of like if T'Challa was out there in the universe, how much can he actually change just by him being awesome and everyone just wanting to be part of his awesome.
Wait, you are the Star-Lord. You saved my home world from a Kree invasion.
All in a day's work.
No, it took several days. 6, in fact. Let us take a picture.
Well, the reason we love T'Challa is that he's always a character of high morals, of knowing what's right, of doing what's right, and he's always regal. He was a man born to be king, even if he's with the Ravagers across the galaxy, he still has that presence of a natural ruler. So his costume is a little bit cleaner, he's a little bit more poised. The Ravagers are less space pirates and more space Robin Hoods.
You know as well as I, no treasure is worth as much as the good that can be done with it. That's my boy.
So you get Yondu, but you get a slightly different Yondu, a Yondu that was influenced by T'Challa, who had grown up in Wakanda. You get a Nebula who was changed by her relationship with T'Challa, who she calls Cha-Cha, which is very funny. There's something Karen Gillan came up with on the day during the record. And most exciting, you've got Thanos.
T'Challa here showed me there was more than one way to reallocate the universe's resources.
Sometimes the best weapon in your arsenal is just a good argument.
Aye, aye, Commander.
Chadwick loved the idea of doing the voice to T'Challa in the series. We sent him the scripts. He loved the voice of T'Challa. It was slightly different than it was in the first film. He really was excited about evolving the character and seeing where the character could go, and he loved the swagger that the Star-Lord version of T'Challa had. And he came in numerous times and did 4 episodes for us.
You may be the soul of this ship, but I am still the captain. We are Ravagers. We do not back down from a fight.
In watching this, the overriding thing for me was just hearing his voice as that character again. Just the mysticism of the character, and really a kind of mysticism that has become his life is a really wonderful blend. Nice to hear him again.
I was the one who told you I wanted to see the world. All you did was show me the universe.
One of the first what-if scenarios we came up with early on is, what if Thor was never banished? What does that look like? And actually, it was in my initial meetings with Marvel. They pitched that to me. They're like, yeah, we're trying to figure out what does an evil Thor look like? And my response was, I don't think he looks evil. I think he looks like a douchebag.
You're Thor? As in Thor, the Norse god of thunder?
I don't know anything about horse gods, but I do know how to bring the thunder. Huzzah!
He's just taking over planets, throwing a party, trashing the place, not paying his bills, just basically everything is Saturday night at 1 in the morning.
Release the phone.
They finally have to press the button.
It's done.
And call in Captain Marvel to clean up the mess.
You know, there's a Midgardian word. Party pooper.
Okay, this one's for Fury.
In these episodes, we want them to hit different genres in a way. And for the Doctor Strange one, that was the one that we wanted to really lean into, like, you know, the horror, the macabre. So bringing in aspects of, you know, H.P. Lovecraft sensibilities into that, and really going there with some of the magic and some of the, like, monsters and the frightfulness.
Those beings have what I need.
Is she worth the pain? A man does not suffer like this for his own glory.
Every moment of it.
Doctor Strange basically becomes obsessed with his own power and creating more and more of it. It's a mixture of like Dorian Gray and Voldemort, and basically he becomes this H.P. Lovecraftian version of himself. The fun twist of the episode is it's a version of Doctor Strange earlier in the timeline is the one who has to stop him because the Lovecraftian Strange is going to destroy the world.
You need to let go. I've gone too far to turn back now.
What If gives us an opportunity to tell stories with a whole new idea of what the physical reality of the universe is. That is something that's going to be explored in other ways moving forward in our films.
You could stop this!
You, more than anyone else, should understand that meddling with time and events only leads to more destruction.
No! No!
It's kind of interesting in that, for me, that, you know, the watcher is compelled in a new way by Doctor Strange's decisions. So I guess we kind of overlapped in our interests there, but I just found it to be really complex and moving and tragic and powerful bit of animation there. Yeah, that one got me. That one got me.
One life, one choice, one moment. Christy can destroy the entire universe.
What If also gave us a way to do a big fan favorite that we'd not done before, which is Marvel Zombies. When Hank Pym went down to the quantum realm to get Janet back, she had been infected with this zombie virus, and when he brought her back, he accidentally infected the world. And fans know that Marvel Zombies is a great comic series where you get to see these zombified versions of all of our heroes.
Marvel Zombies can stand on its own as a story, but it was always a parallel universe. It was always its own what if scenario, actually. It was a spin-off of the Ultimate Run in the comics, and it always existed in its own bespoke reality. So we felt like we could use the what if structure to sneak in our first foray into the Marvel Zombies universe, based on the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, I got a vibe.
For fans of the Marvel Zombies comic series, you'll see certain similarities and Easter eggs that allude to the original run. The state in which they find T'Challa being a big one, certain people's heads in jars.
Ta-da! See for yourself.
Wait, who said that?
It was the ghost. Oh, damn. Hey, would somebody turn me around? We messed up my entrance. You know, I need to get this thing motorized. Hey!
As we were developing the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all the projects that went into creating this big tapestry, it was a very, specific house of cards in a way. In What If, we get to take a baseball bat to that entire structure and just shatter it into a million pieces and see what's left and rebuild in our own mutated, interesting, unexpected forms.
We've seen this before, a universe in the final days of destruction. But this particular story, this one breaks my heart.
I think in some ways everything's surprising about the series, and because that's what's wonderful about this concept, this what-if concept. We have these known stories, these known characters, these known arcs. Doesn't matter. Anything can be explored. And so, in some ways, surprise is the whole point.
In the story of season 1, the Watcher makes it very clear to us that he is not going to get involved.
He's on the wrong path. I could warn him, intervene. But the fate of his universe is not worth risking the safety of all others.
But it just so happens that there is a story that culminates our first season that requires the Watcher's intervention. We reimagine a world where Ultron got the Vision's body as he meant to do in Age of Ultron, the film, and when Thanos inevitably comes to get the Infinity Stone from his forehead, he defeats Thanos.
Fascinating.
And gets all 6 Infinity Stones. Once he does that, he's able to wage war against the entire cosmos and create an entire universe devoid of all life. So devoid of life that he can actually hear the voice of our narrator.
Basking in the boundless silence of his universe, Ultron ascended to a previously unattainable level of consciousness. He became aware of another. He became aware of the...
I see you.
And when he's aware of the Watcher, he can break through the universal wall and wage war on the multiverse itself, which forces the Watcher into a position he's never been in before, which is to defend the very thing that he's sworn an oath to only observe. And it just so happens the perfect cocktail of heroes that he needs to defeat this multiverse-destroying bad guy happen to be the same heroes whose stories we've been watching all season long. And they become the Guardians of the Multiverse.
To the Guardians of
The Multiverse! The Multiverse!
I really believe that deepening fictional mythologies is a way to appreciate them more, is a way to understand them more, look at them in a different way. And they've got now 2 seasons of What If ideas underway that's some of the best storytelling we've ever had. And you may see spin into other mediums, but is really the most uniquely beautiful animated series I've seen in a long time.
We set out to make season 1 believing that it might be our first and last season. So we wanted to tell a complete story in those 10, now 9 episodes. When we got greenlit for the second season, we had to really look at the characters and really justify why we would keep telling stories in this fashion. Obviously, you can spin out any number of what-if stories, and it's exciting to do so.
Bucky!
But we were searching for that central thread that could make it feel like essential viewing for the MCU. And what emerged was the relationship between Captain Carter and the Watcher, which is something that evolves in a grand fashion in the second season of the show.
You'd rather return to another time.
Haven't I earned my happy ending?
Trust me, that world, that time, needs Captain Carter.
I love how richly invested fans are in these stories and the characters and the films. One of the things about Marvel fans, I think, is that they have Marvel universes in their heads as well. They have what exists on film, what exists in the comics, but then in their heads they have these other, imaginings and stories that they tell too. And I think that's all a part of the storytelling universe. And so the opportunity for us to begin to explore these alternate realities in ways that might touch on some ideas that fans have had or don't, or surpass those expectations is going to be really cool. And it also opens the door and a series of doors to other endless possibilities.
Your stories, they